Stay close to me, no matter what happens. I am not afraid, because you are here.
The city of Varrock had not known silence in 3 years. Every morning began with the same sound, the low, mechanical groan of the harvester drones scraping through the rubble, searching, always searching, for anything that still breathed. Sergeant Kael Doran had learned to sleep through explosions. He had learned to eat cold rations without tasting them. He had learned to stop counting the dead. What he had not learned was how to ignore a child crying in the dark. It was on the 47th day of the Varrock siege that Kael first heard her. He was moving low through the collapsed eastern quarter, his boots crunching over broken glass and scorched metal. The sky above was choked with ash, and the twin moons of this planet hung like pale wounds behind the smoke. 3 harvester units had passed through this block an hour before. Nothing should have been alive here. But something was. He pressed himself against a crumbled wall, raised his rifle, and listened. The crying was soft, barely a sound at all, more like a vibration in the air, something between a whisper and a pulse. Kael swept the corner slowly, and that was when he saw her. She was small, impossibly small, crouched behind the ruins of what had once been a market stall, her knees pulled tight to her chest, her long white hair matted with dust. Her skin was the color of a winter sky, pale blue-gray, and her ears came to sharp, delicate points at the top. Her eyes, when they opened and found his face, were enormous and silver, catching what little light existed in that broken place. She could not have been older than 6 in human years, at least. Kael lowered his rifle immediately. "Hey," he whispered. "Hey, I'm not going to hurt you." She didn't understand his words, but she understood his hands. Open, palms out, the universal language of something that is not a weapon. She did not run. Chapter 2. The Weight of Something Small. He called her Lyra. He didn't know her real name. Her language was a series of soft tones and breath patterns that he had no framework for. But when he hummed a low note to test a sound, she had tilted her head and repeated it back perfectly, and somehow Lyra felt right. She had no family. That much was clear from the way she looked at the empty ruins around her, not with fresh grief, but with the hollowed acceptance of someone who had already grieved past the point of tears. Whatever she had lost it before Kael found her. He carried her on his back when they moved. She weighed almost nothing, lighter than his pack, lighter than his ammunition, and yet her presence behind him felt enormous. Her small hands gripped the straps of his tactical vest, and she pressed her face between his shoulder blades when the distant explosions shook the ground. He felt her heartbeat against his spine, fast, fluttering, like a trapped bird. "You're okay," he told her every time. "I've got you." He didn't know if she understood. But every time he said it, her grip relaxed, just slightly. The harvesters were a problem. They were machines built by the Veth Collective, tall, gray-armored constructs with red optical sensors and bodies that moved with wrong, angular precision. They had been deployed to eliminate resistance on Varrock, and they did not distinguish between soldiers and civilians, between adults and children. To a harvester, a heat signature was a target. Kael had 7 rounds left in his primary magazine. He had a blade. He had his hands. And he had Lyra, who, it turned out, had something he did not expect. Chapter 3. What she could do. On the 3rd night, a harvester patrol found them. They were sheltered inside the skeleton of a collapsed building, Kael half asleep with Lyra curled against his side. The drone's footsteps sent vibrations through the floor before the sound reached his ears, and he was up instantly, one hand over Lyra's mouth, gently, carefully, eyes wide in the dark. The harvester stopped at the entrance. Its red eyes swept the interior. And then Lyra did something extraordinary. She breathed out a long, slow, controlled exhale, and the air around them shimmered. Not visibly, not in any way a camera could have caught, but Kael felt it in his chest, a pressure change, like the moment before a storm breaks. The harvester's optical sensor flickered. Once. Twice. Then it turned and walked away. Kael stared at Lyra. She looked up at him with those silver eyes and pressed one small finger to her lips. "Quiet," she was saying. "That is what I can do." She could not make them invisible, But she could disrupt signal, biological electromagnetic output, the thing the harvesters tracked. She could fold it inward, hold it close, make two people disappear from every sensor that existed. He didn't understand the science. He wasn't sure there was a human word for the science. But it worked. They moved faster after that. Together, they had something neither of them had alone: his strength, his knowledge of the terrain, his soldier's instincts, and her gift, her quiet power, her ability to make the machines look away. They were, impossibly, a team. Chapter 4. The Anchor. On the 12th day of traveling together, Kael found the extraction point. A battered human transport ship sat at the edge of the old spaceport, engines warming, 3 surviving soldiers waving from the loading ramp. They were leaving. They had to leave. The planet was lost. He ran toward it with Lyra on his back, her arms tight around his neck. He could hear the harvesters behind them, a full unit, 8 constructs, their heavy footsteps shaking the cracked tarmac. He ran harder than he had ever run in his life. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. Lyra pressed her lips against the back of his neck and exhaled, that long, shimmering breath, and he felt the harvester's pursuit slow, confused, the signal lost. They made it to the ramp. He collapsed onto the floor of the ship, chest heaving, and Lyra slid off his back and sat beside him, her small hand finding his. The ramp closed. The engines roared. Through the scratched viewport, Varrock fell away below them. Burning, broken, beautiful in the terrible way that destroyed things sometimes are.
Kael, she said.
He turned. It was the first time she had said his name clearly. Not an approximation, not a tonal copy, but his name, in his language, shaped carefully in her mouth like something precious. "You are my anchor," she said, slowly, each word deliberate. She had been learning. She had been listening every single day. Forever. Kael Doran, who had not cried since the first year of the war, who had built walls inside himself so high he had forgotten there was anything behind them, felt something break open in his chest. Not painfully, the way a window breaks open on the first warm day of spring. He pulled her close. She pressed her face against his shoulder, and he held her the way you hold something you did not know you needed until the moment you almost lost it. Outside, the stars stretched wide and endless. Inside, 2 people, one human, one not, breathed together in the quiet. And for the first time in 3 years, Kael Doran felt like something more than a soldier. He felt like someone's home.